Okay, so to start, I'm just going to go through my materials. I have my scrap piece of paper, which is Arch's watercolor paper. I have my water. I have my watercolor paints, which are Winsor & Newton, and I have my brushes. So I'm just going to go over water control for 3 different sizes of brushes because it does make a difference, the struggle that you can have with the different size of brushes. The bigger the brush, the more water it holds, so it can be a bit trickier to figure out how much water you need on your brush. Okay, so I'm just going to do this on a scrap piece of paper just to show you. So when you're putting water on your brush and you are putting it in your paint, you want to make sure that when you lift it up, it's not dripping off of your brush. If it's dripping, then you have too much water, obviously. My rule of thumb, so if you're first wetting your paints first, like so these were dry, I take a bunch of water on my brush, I put it in my dry palette, and put a bunch of water in there, okay? Now before I start using my brush, I won't just go right to painting because there's too much water on here. You can kind of see it's saturated, and if you're doing something detailed, you don't want to make a mistake. So I'll just show you what that looks like though if I were to go straight from lots of water on my brush to the paint to my paper, right? So it's pretty wet, and if you can see, it pools in one area. That means you have too much water. Okay, now there are a couple ways you can fix this. I'm just going to show you really quickly. What I do is I dry off my brush on my paper towel, which is over here, but it's really messy. You'd think I'd get a new piece of paper towel, but I didn't. I dry off my brush, and then I just pick up the color with my brush, dry it on my paper towel, and pick up the color. And that will take some of the water off for you. Okay, you can do that. Or you can pick it up straight with your paper towel. So there, it's pooling again. You can just take the corner of your paper towel and just soak it up that way. Okay, so that's what you can do to fix it if you do put too much water on your brush, but I'm going to teach you how to avoid that. So obviously this is a big brush. It picks up lots of water. So after every time, almost every time I put my brush in the water, I always just gently scrape it against the side to take off some of that excess water. I'll put it in my paint, and if I still think there's too much water on there, I might just tap it lightly on my paper towel just to see. If it spreads out quickly, that means there's too much water. Okay, but eventually after, you're just gonna get the hang of it. It takes a bit of practice just to know how much water you want on your brush and how much paint you want on your brush. It's practice, but those are some things you can do. Just gently rub it against the side, take off some of that water, and you can put it on your paper towel just to see. Now, when I ask you to do a light wash of something, so a light wash is when you have more water than paint on your brush, so you get a really light color. You might think that you might have to put tons of water, so well, I'm just gonna clean up this part of the palette for a second. Okay. So I have my water, I put my paint like that. You might think to get a light color you need lots of water, right? But then you're just gonna have too much water on your brush and on your paper. So what you can do is just make that really light color. So as you see, there's tons of water in my palette right now, okay? And maybe that's the color you want, this really light blue. Just, again, wipe off the excess water and then dip it in to get that really light color. Okay, then your paper's not overflowing with water. So just take off the excess water and dip it in gently, okay? And that's how you can get a light wash of a color without having tons of water on your paper or on your paintbrush. Okay, so that's usually, I find, the issue with the bigger brushes. The smaller brushes, I find I don't have to do this as much unless I'm doing some really tiny detail. Like if you see, there is water just dripping off my brush, okay? And if I was to do tiny detail and I have all this water, you know, especially if something's already wet, it's just gonna be too much, right? Maybe I want it to be a lot less. So I'm just gonna, you know, see the difference? That's a lot of water, that's less water. Just again, wipe it off. But in most cases with the smaller brush, because it doesn't pick up as much water, I don't tend to do that. But that's always just a good rule of thumb, just to, I always tell my kindergarten students that dip it, wipe it, then put it in the paint. Okay, so there's that. And then a medium-sized brush, I would still say do that, because you can see, and just test your own, how much water you can pick up. Okay, if you're dipping it into a dry color, you're gonna need a decent amount of water. Sometimes I just do that. But before I start painting, if I'm doing something like small and detailed, I will wipe it off. But say I'm coloring in like a big circle. I don't know why, but I'm coloring a big circle. And I need to cover that whole surface area with a smaller brush. I won't wipe it against the side, right? Because I want that water. Sometimes I dip it right in if it's a big surface area and I have a smaller brush. Okay, it's just something you need to practice. And then again, if you do have too much water, you need to fix it. You can touch it with your paper towel, or you can wash off your brush, dry it, and pick it up that way. Now, if you really make a mistake, say, I don't even know if this will make a mistake. You want a blue, you put too much blue there. Here, there's too much water, okay? And it's like running all over the place. You don't want that. Take your paper towel and just press it and pick up the color. And now you kind of have to work fast, because if it's still wet, it will work, but if it starts to dry, it won't work, okay? So that's just something you can do. If you think that you've messed up and you put too much water or something, you can pick up color that way. And I still do that a lot, because sometimes I'll do something and it just won't look the way I want it to. But yeah, so there's a couple little helpful tips that will help you with your water control. I hope that helps. If you guys have any questions, comment below, or you can message me directly, and that's about it. Thanks so much for watching.